What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Rick Scale RC. Thanks for joining me. What I'm working on today is I'm getting some weathering done on the Brute. What I did off camera is the first step, I took some of this red Scotch-Brite pad, and this is an old one, dirty one, and that actually comes into play as you're Scotch-Briting the body and you're going over stuff like these hinges. The dirt tends to come off of the Scotch-Brite pad onto the body, which actually kind of plays into the weathering effect. And it happened accidentally one time, and now I always keep a dirty Scotch-Brite for when I want to do some weathering. So what I've done is I went over the whole body. Not the whole body, but I did like spots like the rounded edges of the hood. That's where the TJs tend to do a lot of sun fading. The raised section of the hood all the way around. You know, the edges of the windshield. I scuffed up all along the bottom of the body here and up, just to dull it out a little bit, because I did use a clear gloss, a clear gloss, and I did that on purpose because I was hoping it would work well when it came time for the weathering process. I figured if I painted it like a real Jeep, then when I weathered it, I'd have that much more of a chance to make it look, you know, more realistic. So, went over it with a Scotch-Brite pad, did the roof around the edges I did the whole roof, but I did around the edges real good just to make them look a little bit more faded, a little bit more worn. Again, did the fenders, did the lower sections of the bed. I did in here on this body line just to make it look like, you know, the paint was, or the clear was faded. Did the tailgate. I did the bottom half a lot more than the top half, so the top still got some gloss in areas, but the bottom is pretty much just flat now. And then what I'm doing now, I'm done with the Scotch-Briting part of it. What I'm doing now is I'm using some Vallejo black model wash, and I'm using my thinnest brush, my smallest bristle brush. And what I do is I'll just shake this up really good, and it'll kind of bubble up, and then I'll just squeeze it, and you see the bubbles that are coming out of there, and I'll just put the brush over it and let those bubbles land in the lid, and then I'll dip the brush in that. And I'll usually have an old t-shirt handy, and you don't want a lot of paint on the brush. And a lot of times what I'll even do is just hit it a couple times on the t-shirt just to get rid of some of the paint on the brush. And then what I like to do is I come in and stuff like these mirrors, the brackets, just like in the corners, just kind of dab it in there a little bit. And just kind of, you know, you want to kind of accentuate everything, and the body lines. Up here on the cowl section, you know, where this bend is here, on both sides. What I like to do is I'll have my t-shirt handy, and then I'll just come in here and lightly brush in the corner of that body line. And then I'll give it a wipe. And all I'm doing there is just trying to make it look like I got some dirt stuck in the, you know, in the crease or the corner of the body line. And I'll do that all the way across in that little crevice. And again, you don't want a lot of paint on the brush because, I mean, I guess it also depends on how far you want to take this. But for what I'm doing, I don't want a lot of paint on the brush. So when it gets to a point where it's almost not brushing and you can just barely see it on there, I almost don't even have to wipe it at that point. Brush some into the creases of the hinges. And I like to wipe mainly because sometimes when you do just hit it with the brush, it'll still tend to look brushed. You can still see some little brush strokes in it. So by taking the rag and giving it a wipe, you just kind of smear it in there and rub it in, and it's still there, but it doesn't look like it's brushed in anymore. So but the more you want this to look weathered, the darker you want it to be, the less you would wipe, the longer you would let it sit on there. Obviously, the more you would use on the brush. What I'm going to do here on the door is the body line in the door. I'm just going to lightly add in some just to make it look like, it's got some dirt built up in that corner. And a lot of times when you wipe this stuff, you'll take a lot of the color off, but it still kind of stains the paint a little bit. And if you ever do a little too much, you can wet it. As long as you do it right away, you can wet your rag a little bit and just kind of rub it in, and it will fade out. What I'm doing here is slightly coming in and kissing each side of the hood gap. Just build that up in there and wipe it out. And then that'll just kind of darken up your crease. Add some depth to it, make it look like some dirt's built up in there. As you can see, I've done it all along here and inside the door jamb. Very lightly, just subtle. I've also added some dirt underneath here to kind of make it look like, kicking your feet on the side of the rocker panel, getting in and out of it. Again, subtle, but it is in here. I can see it more than it seems to be picking up on camera. So maybe when you guys see it outside, it'll show up a little bit more for you. And then in here, what I'm doing is on that body line, right on that bottom ledge, just adding some in to kind of make it look like some dirt sitting on that ledge, and add a little bit of a shadow to everything. Oop, got a little bit on the side of the truck. That's okay. Sometimes you can, at least to me, it seems like you can clearly see that you just brush that stuff on, even when you wipe it off. Like the edges kind of, I don't know. I just really think it looks better after blending it in with the Scotch-Brite, especially on something like this where it's got the dull finish and it doesn't really matter. I really like to take a little extra step and hit it with the Scotch-Brite pad and kind of help blend it in. Back here on the tailgate, I added some in the tailgate gaps. Again, just to make it look like, you know, there's some dirt built up in the gap there. Also in this body line here, just kind of brush it into that line all the way across. I'm running out of paint on the brush, but it's okay because I've already done this, so it doesn't need a lot. Oop. And then just come back and give it a wipe. And again, you know, if you're shooting for dark, you don't have to wipe it. You can just leave that on there and let it dry. You can even, if you want the whole thing to have a darker finish, you can brush out the whole truck with it if you really wanted it to. And eventually I probably will. Just right now I'm not trying to take it that far just yet. I just want to make it look like it has seen the trail. You know, it's not a trailer queen. As you can see on this side, because the driver's side will obviously get used a little more, I made the dirt a little bit more presentable on this side. Okay guys, so I'm getting ready to wrap up, we'll say stage 1 of the weathering process on the Brute. You know, like I said, I don't want to take it too far too fast. I do want it to look fairly nice for a little bit, and then as time goes and I start to get bored with the look, we'll start weathering it some more and make it look more beat up. But we've done interior, we've worked on the outside. The last thing I want to touch on is the bed. You know, the bed is still, you know, got a nice, clean, unscratched, glossy black finish to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's make it look beat up. Let's make it look like it's carried a few things. You know, a rock or two thrown in the back. Got some 220, I think this is 220. Yep, got some 220 here. I'm just going to lay it down and just move it around. You know, I don't want to put a grain in it, so I don't want to go one way or the other. You just move it around. Make it look like it's dirty, like it's scratched, like it's the bed of a truck. Then what I'm going to do is, I have a black wash and I have a Rust Effects wash. Okay, we're going to use this Laconia, New Hampshire Bike Week shot glass. And what we're going to do, a little splash of the red, Rust Effects, and then you want to do about equal parts. I'm going to take one of my beater brushes, and what I mean by that is just, this is just an old beat up paintbrush that I use for this wash and other stuff that I wouldn't want to use a good brush for, you know. Alright, that's a little more black than red, so, or brown, or whatever you'd want to call that. It's supposed to be Rust Effect, so it's like a orangey brown. What I'm trying to get here is just like a mud, you know, dark brown. Kind of see what I'm working with there. And all I'm going to do now is just brush that in there. I'm going to cover the whole bed floor. Maybe even get a little bit on the bottom of the toolbox, make it look like mud's come up. As you can see, I used all of it. But get that brushed in real good. And then what I'm going to do just dab it, because I don't want to take it out of there. I just don't want it to look so put in there, you know. Kind of make it look a little more natural. Then what I'm going to do is drop my file on my foot. Alright. This is more of the child's gate, the wooden child's gate that I've slowly been using pieces off of. I think you guys might remember I used this stuff to make the muffler for JK. I'm going to take my file, hold this wood over the bed, and just get some sawdust in there. Some of it will look like sawdust, some of it will be so fine that it just looks like chunks of dirt back there. I'm just going through and like pushing it down so it sticks into the paint and absorbs that color, because you don't want a bunch of fresh, clean looking sawdust. I mean, you can have some, but see, you end up, I'm not giving you guys the finger, but you end up with like this chunky brown, and it really looks good in the back of the bed. And then I'm just kind of, you know, just smearing it in there. Don't gotta be pretty. There's absolutely no technique to this at all. I really, when I'm doing it, I'm just kind of winging it. You know, I don't have any set technique. There's no process. I mean, you saw what I did to get to this point, but I really don't know what the end result's going to be. I just know I don't want it to look glossy black, you know, I want it to look like it's a used bed. Okay guys, so for the last thing I want to do to this at this point is we're going to weather the windshield. And the first thing I like to do, I like to use, you know, the blue painter's tape, but you could use any type of masking tape. Get it on there as straight as possible to begin with. Just kind of lightly draw on there. Where the wipers would run. After you get that drawn on, you're happy with it, go ahead and pull it off. I like to just lay it down flat on the bench. Use my sharp X-Acto. And what you'll end up with is your stencil. And you know you put it on straight, so just line up the ends with your wiper blades. Alright, now that I got this all taped off, what I'm going to do is just run outside and I'm going to hit it with some matte clear. And you're not going to want to coat this like you're painting it. I'm just going to literally mist it. You know, you just want very little bit. So, I'm going to go throw some of this on. I'll be right back. Okay guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the weathering process. Hope, you know, you maybe even picked something up, something you can try on your rigs. And thanks for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated. You guys have a great day. Take care.